Hey, listeners, we usually use this podcast feed to deliver all the conversations we have on my live radio show, but today we're sending you a little something extra. WNYC Studios partnered with Theater of War to do what Theater of War usually does on a stage, on the radio instead. And what do? Well, they take pieces of important journalism and present them by having top-tier actors perform readings from the articles and then hold discussions about the reporting, sometimes including the reporter or their subjects, sometimes including the actors, and always including questions and comments from listeners like you. WNYC and Theater of War are partnering on 4 specials along those lines, including the one you're about to hear. So follow WNYC and Theater of War on social media to learn more about past and upcoming programs. And without further ado, here's Theater of War on the radio.
From WNYC in New York, this is Theater of War on the radio. I'm Kai Wright, and it's good to be here. This is the second of 4 live specials we're doing, and I'm joined in the studio by Bryan Doerries, who is artistic director of Theater of War, which he co-founded in 2009. And Bryan, explain what we're going to do together with our listeners tonight in this special series.
Thanks, Kai. Theater of War, we work with some of the best actors on the planet. We have over 200 actors in our company who, when they get the call from us, they jump to come read texts like we're going to read tonight, poetry, plays, historic texts, journalism, to start a framework for a conversation with listeners, with audiences, and that's what we're going to do tonight on the radio.
Okay. So for tonight's conversation, for tonight's version of that, we're going to focus on a story published in The New Yorker that takes place right here on the streets of New York City. It's written by David Sedaris, who is, of course, a longtime public radio voice, author, satirist. And we're going to hear a reading of this story performed by an extraordinary group of actors who are live in the studio with us right here.
Yes, I'm so excited tonight. We have 3 of my favorite New York actors, Jesse Eisenberg, Rosie Perez, and David Patrick Kelly. Hey, guys, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
What a pleasure.
Hey, hello. And they're going to be reading a recent piece by David Sedaris, as Kai mentioned, that was recently published in The New Yorker. When Marjolaine Goldsmith, who's on my staff, and a colleague brought the piece, and it was published in the March 2nd edition just about 10 days ago, I read it and I thought, this is a piece that's going to get people thinking and listening and talking about themselves. And for me, it's about community. It's about what it means to be neighbors. It's about the serendipity and luck that's possible in New York. It's about the unique possibility of connection and also disconnection in New York City. And I'm really excited for listeners to hear it and to hear what listeners have to say about it tonight.
Yeah. Okay, so you all have heard this phrase probably, New York City isn't nice, but it's kind. And personally, I think that's quite accurate, but we want to hear what you think. And so here's what we're going to do. After our actors perform the story, we're going to take your calls. And we want to hear your reactions to the version of New York that David Sedaris describes in this story. That'll be his version of life on our streets. What's yours? So write down this number, 212-433-WNYC. That's 212-433-9692. You don't have to actually write it down. I'll tell you again later. But after we all listen to this, you're going to give us a call. And Bryan, what do you want our listeners to think about as they're taking in this reading and getting ready to snatch up their phones and talk to us?
As you listen to tonight's story, I want you to think about moments of connection and disconnection you've had in the city, missed connections. Moments you've tried to connect but haven't found the way to connect. Or maybe times you felt isolated and you wished you'd connected with people. We want to hear New York stories that define your experiences here in this city. Stories that are foundational to you as New Yorkers that resonate with David Sedaris' story that we're going to be reading here tonight.
So, I know we as New Yorkers love to talk about being New Yorkers. This is your opportunity. This is a good moment to text that friend you're constantly swapping stories with. Tell them to tune in to, then all of y'all join the conversation and argue about it with us. Okay, Bryan, set up the reading.
Great. The reading is about 15 minutes long, give or take. Jesse's a very fast reader, so it might be shorter. So grab a cup of tea or whatever you need to stay comfortable and join me and Kai and everyone, hopefully in New York City, who's tuning in tonight and listening to this story. Jesse Eisenberg is going to start things off.
Thanks, Bryan. The fitness center I go to in New York is 30 blocks from my apartment, and I was walking home from it one autumn afternoon when I came upon a woman who was attempting to carry a cabinet. It was waist-high and maybe 5 feet long, a metal frame with 8 canvas drawers. I watched as she lifted it, took a few steps, and then set it back down with an expression that read as both, "How badly do I really need this?" and "Why can't we temporarily shrink things when getting them from place to place?" The woman had silver hair that was cut short. She was lean and had no makeup on. "Hello," I said. "Can I help you with that?" I guessed correctly that she'd found this cabinet on the curb, just as I'd found my current desk, chair, and countless pieces of furniture in the past. I got my kitchen table in Chicago the same way. When I moved to London, my first table was used as well, but that one wasn't found on the street. Rather, it came from an Indian restaurant I'd gone to a friend with who was visiting from Arizona.
"Anything else?"
Our waiter had asked at the end of the meal. "Yes," I'd said. "Can I have this table? It's the perfect size for my kitchen." The man asked if we could wait for a moment. Then he made a phone call and returned saying he could let it go for 20 pounds. "Sold," I said. "Now what about our napkins and the metal bowl my saag paneer was served in?" With my friend's help, the table, the napkins, and the bowl weren't difficult to get home. Unlike the cabinet. The thing wasn't heavy so much as cumbersome. I thought it'd be easy for me to carry on my own, but the woman would not hear of it.
Ugh, you're too old,
she said.
I can't let you hurt yourself on account of me.
You want to talk old? I thought, looking at her age-spotted hands and the slight waddle beneath her chin. You've got a good 8 months on me. It was her fine, though, so we did it her way. Me on one side and her on the other, the two of us facing each other and separated by a distance of 18 inches, the bottom of the cabinet bashing our shins with every step.
Can we just stop and rest for a minute?
She panted in the middle and at the end of every block. I was in a hurry to get home because I had a show that night. I needed to take a bath and iron my clothes. I also needed to figure out my program, what I would read, and in what order. "Are you coming from work?" I asked the woman, suspecting that she was retired, but wanting to hear it from her own mouth.
Oh, I stopped all of that a few years ago.
She said.
I'm on my way home from pickleball. Do you play?
I'd heard of this game, but I tend to tune out when the topic turns to sports. Thus, I had no idea what it actually was. Tennis with pickles would have been my first guess. But if that were the case, I'd likely have smelled vinegar on the woman's clothing.
It's a great way to meet people.
She continued.
I had colleagues at work, but they weren't exactly friends, if you know what I mean.
She told me that she was born in San Juan, but moved to New York as a child.
This city is nothing like it used to be,
she said, frowning at a high-rise apartment building that had recently gone up.
My neighbors now, they'll see someone bleeding on the street and walk right by. That would never happen where I'm from. In Puerto Rico, if someone's hungry, you feed them. End of story.
I thought of all the people who'd passed this woman as she tried to carry the cabinet by herself. Some undoubtedly were elderly or had children with them. But what of the others? I know my brother Paul would have stopped to help, and my friend Mark. But would Amy? I wondered. Would Hugh?
New York is just for the rich now.
The woman complained.
They run the show. It's all about them.
I wanted to ask what she meant by rich, because, of course, it's subjective. Would I have qualified, or was she talking about people with billions? In the paper earlier that week, I'd learned that Elon Musk was on track to become the world's first trillionaire. I think that if you have that much money, you should at least be forced to sit down and count it all. From what I read online a few hours later, dressed for my show and riding the elevator from my apartment to my building's lobby, if Musk recited a number every second, it would take him more than 31,000 years to reach a trillion. A regular lifetime wouldn't put a dent in a figure like his. One of his children would have to take over when he died, followed by one of their children, and on for 1,000 generations. By that time, a trillion might get you a chicken wing and a bucket of house paint. A non-millionaire is what you'll want to be in the future. That's 1 followed by 30 zeros. I looked up how long it would take to count that high and was presented with a math equation. Counting my money, by contrast, would take 500 days. After a week, though, would I say, that's enough? I'll forfeit the rest. My freedom is more important than sitting in this chair. Or would I picture something I really wanted to buy, a gorilla on 5 acres of land, maybe, and keep going? At what point, if any, would I decide that I'd had enough? This question was on my mind as I waved goodnight to my doorman and started walking downtown in the direction of my first apartment in New York, which was in the West Village. It wasn't mine, technically. Rather, I was the roommate of a guy named Rusty who'd had the lease for 13 years. We both smoked a lot, but he liked to keep the windows shut, which left the place smelling sad and stale. When the outside temperature dipped below 70, he'd turn up the heat as high as it would go, the way they do in nursing homes and in tanks where bearded dragons live. My half of the stabilized rent was $350, an astronomical sum to me in 1990. The first time I was late giving Rusty his money, he said firmly, but not unkindly,
This can never happen again. Do you understand?
Back then, it would have taken me all of 2 minutes to count my money. That's normal for a 7-year-old, but I was 34, and by most measures, a failure. No job, no prospects, a single pair of shoes. I'd go to the ATM and curse it for not dispensing singles. A broken payphone near my apartment spat $6 and change at me one afternoon, and scooping it up with both hands, I tasted what it felt like to be rich. In those days, I could either buy a newspaper or a cup of coffee, so I would dig the Times or the Village Voice out of a trash can and go to Chock full of Nuts to read the Help Wanted ads. Looking at the available positions, I'd kick myself for never developing a real skill. Yes, I was writing every day, but only with one finger, and it was hardly the sort of writing that would have landed me any of the jobs I saw advertised. The one, for instance, at Little Golden Books. They were looking for someone to produce a short educational manuscripts about outer space, and were willing to pay $5,000, a fortune. After reading the ad, I got a library card and started doing research. Little Golden Books were for children, and that, I thought, would make it easier. Can you imagine life without gravity? I wrote on my first page. Whoopee! This was followed sometime later by, How does a weightless astronaut use the toilet? Let's find out. I wrote about Miss Baker, a squirrel monkey who was one of the first 2 American animals to launch into space and return safely. Her fellow passenger, also a monkey but a rhesus, named Miss Abel, died 4 days after their rocket was recovered in the Atlantic Ocean. Miss Baker, though, lived to be 27 and died of kidney failure. Why were the first 2 astronaut monkeys unmarried, I wrote. Do you think husbands would have distracted them from the duties at hand? It was, I thought, something a kid might wonder about. When my sample chapters were rejected, I was devastated. All that work, all that research, for nothing. To make it worse, in my head, I'd already spent the $5,000. First, I'd figure I'd find an apartment of my own. They were hard to come by, so maybe Rusty could die in a quick, painless way, and the landlord would decide that since I had already settled in, he could just turn the lease over to me. I'd get a nice desk, a bed rather than a futon. I would paint the nicotine-stained walls and then buy a second pair of shoes. The day I learned I would not be writing for the Little Golden Book of Space, I was forced to consider what I had been pushing out of my mind since arriving in New York. It was the worst thing imaginable, moving back to Chicago. I'd had a nice life there and lots of good friends. I could get my old job back just by asking, but I'd seen what that looked like, the person who returns with his tail between his legs, the one overheard at parties saying,
The thing is that New York is completely overrated. I was paying a fortune for a shoebox there, a prison cell. While here, I've got 5 rooms and can practically see Lake Michigan from my roof.
That was evading the point, though. Unlike Chicago or Raleigh or any of the other cities I spent time in, New York was about everyone who'd ever lived there, or at least everyone in the arts. People who'd arrived just as I had, audaciously and with nothing. It was a test. It was your final exam. But what you needed to pass, on top of any talent you might possess, was luck. It was the sort of thing that might come anyone's way, yet it couldn't be arranged. Nor could it be bought. And that put everyone on the same playing field. The person with a graduate degree from Yale and the one who'd taken 5 writing classes, one of them at the Y. Luck could be waiting for you at the public library, but it was just as likely at the grocery store or on a traffic island. It wasn't that someone might tap you on the shoulder and say, I'm with Little Brown and Company. Do you by any chance have a manuscript we can publish? But you might see something or hear something you could write about, something that would knock an idea loose or strike a chord. Even being robbed or hit by a car could prove fruitful. So what are you doing reading a magazine in your bedroom, a towel under the door to blot out the sound of your roommate's TV? Get out there where luck can find you. The Puerto Rican woman and I carried the cabinet for a good 6 blocks and had just reached her street when a stout man in coveralls walked up to a van that was parked on the corner.
Hey!
She called to him before breaking into rapid Spanish. I understood the words help, apartment, and stairs, along with the phrase, I'll pay you. An exact sum was not proposed, but still the man agreed. When he offered to carry the cabinet on his own, the woman didn't argue. Rather, she gave him an address in the center of the block.
So what's your name?
She asked me as the guy took some gloves out of his pocket and fitted his plump, paint-spattered hands into them. David, I told her. And she said,
Oh, just like my son.
We waved goodbye and then parted, saying we'd maybe see each other in the neighborhood. As I hurried downtown, a man sitting on the ground outside a liquor store held out an empty cup.
Help the homeless?
It irritates me when by the homeless people mean themselves. It should be help one of the homeless, I wanted to tell him. Otherwise it sounds like you're going to take whatever you collect and distribute it to the other people in need. The man saw all of this playing out. The man saw all of this playing out on my face and barked, quite unfairly in my opinion,
I hope you burn in hell.
which of course is another reason to live in New York. Every day delivers a kick, and always in a different spot. There are times when being condemned to hell really gets under my skin. Am I a terrible person? I'll ask myself. Am I crueler than most? Am I thoughtless? If I'm cursed by a mentally ill person, I'll really dig in and claw at myself. I've always seen them as prophets and hold my breath as I pass, afraid of the truth they might reveal. Early in my time in New York, not long after the Little Golden Book episode, a woman dressed in rags in the Staten Island ferry terminal looked at me in the eye and told me I was going to die before I reached 50. Thousands of people moving about like ants, yet I was the one she singled out. Her voice was clear and authoritative, like an oracle's. Our brief encounter really lit a fire under me. I've only got 16 years to make a splash, I thought, knowing that time would pass a lot faster than I'd wanted to. When I didn't die at age 50, when I woke up in Paris, as alive as I'd been the day before, I was shocked, but also greatly relieved, for my life was good by then, and I didn't want it taken away from me. This time, though, I walked on by. Burn in hell indeed, I thought. First off, the guy on the sidewalk outside the liquor store was a drunk, not an oracle. Second, I had just helped a stranger carry a cabinet down York Avenue for what felt to me, and probably to her, too, like an eternity. And a person gets points for things like that.
That was Cash and Carry, written by author David Sedaris. It was performed for us by Jesse Eisenberg, Rosie Perez, and David Patrick Kelly. And it was published in the March 2nd, 2026 print edition of the New Yorker magazine. And now we want to hear from you, dear listener. Do you have a New York story that feels something like the one you just heard? Call us up and tell us that story, 212-433-WNYC. That's 212-433-9692. Maybe as you listened, you heard a particular moment that landed for you because it connected with your own story in some way. Maybe it was a time that the city showed you something about other people, or when it taught you something about yourself. Or, so many of us who call this city home are like David Sedaris, and we have migrated here from somewhere else. Maybe that's you. So maybe there was a point in this story that made you think about the moment you realized, yeah, I'm a New Yorker. That's me. This is where I belong. Tell us about that. 212-433-WNYC. That's 212-433-9692. We want to hear about your encounters with your fellow New Yorkers that taught you anything, something about life in our great city. I'm Kai Wright. This is a live special Theater of War on the radio, and we will take your calls after a break. Welcome back. This is a live special, Theater of War on the radio from WNYC. I'm Kai Wright. I host an upcoming show from The Guardian, but I'm also a former member of the WNYC family, and I am so pleased to be back with you all tonight. I'm joined by Bryan Doerries, Artistic Director of Theater of War, and we want to hear from you. We want to hear your New York stories. Our number is 212-433-WNYC. That's 212-433-9692. We just listened to a reading of a story written by David Sedaris, which was recently published in The New Yorker. The story is about what it means to live in this fair city and how we navigate each other all the time. So 212-433-WNYC to hear your version. Bryan, remind us real quick what we want our listeners to be thinking about as they pick up their phones.
Yeah, as you listen to the story, which is called Cash and Carry, were there lines that spoke to you, that jumped out and resonated with experiences you've had in the streets and subways and in grocery aisles, made you think about things you've experienced here in New York, people you've connected with, people you haven't, and what happened when you did? Tell us what happened. Tell us your New York stories. We want to hear from you.
212-433-WNYC. That's 212-433-9692. And let's start taking your calls. John from Little Neck, New York. Welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot. Can you guys hear me?
We sure can. What's your story, John?
It's fantastic. Yeah, I mean, this, you guys, that was a great reading. It conjured up a story. When I first moved into New York City, newly married, my wife from California, and we rented our first apartment in the Upper East Side on 77th Street between 1st and 2nd. And we were driving in the city in one of these, big U-Hauls, and I had a bunch of boxes in the back. And we were moving into a 6th-floor walk-up, right? No elevator, 6th floor, and, these U-Hauls usually take up half the block and cause traffic, and people are honking, and it was a stressful situation, and I was like, oh, my God, I'm going to need some help. And then I saw this guy, pushing, a big fiberglass cow on wheels, and I said, hey, buddy, can you give me a hand? I just got to get these boxes up, and my wife, she's pregnant. And,
would you figure because he was pushing the cow, he had the strength? Is that?
So yeah, and I remember it was Brother Jimmy's barbecue cow. He used to push the cow around the neighborhood, and the guy, without hesitation, just started lifting boxes up the 6 flights, and he did 3 round trips, and my wife, who's from California, was like, wow, they're pretty nice in New York, huh?
There you go.
There it is.
So
beautiful. Thank you so much, John. I really appreciate you sharing that story. We'll never forget the story of the cow being wheeled down the street.
Let's go to Rosie in Hoboken. Rosie, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much. Yeah, that was a great story. As you were talking, it reminded me of just seeing people, struggling and worrying that no one else is going to step in and help them, and feeling like if I don't do it, I don't know who else is going to. So I was reminded of it very recently during one of the big snowstorms. I was driving back into New York, and there was this elderly woman who was stranded in a snowbank on the side of the road, and she was trying to shovel her car out with one of those snow brushes that you use on your window. And literally no one was helping her. She was standing in the middle of the road trying to do this by herself. So I did a U-turn, drove back, pulled into the parking lot that she was at, and by the time I got there, 3 other people had already pulled in and were trying to help her too. So we kind of formed this coalition, and these 2 women helped her get back into her car, kind of helped her calm down. This guy said he was going to push her back into the road, and so I was like, okay, I'm just going to block traffic. So I stood in the middle of the road with my arms outstretched and waited and tried to hold off traffic while they got her back rolling, and she kind of merrily rolled along back onto the street and went on her way, and I felt a little bit better about the world for a few minutes. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Rosie. A little bit better about the world for a few minutes. That's long enough,
Yeah.
If the streets could give us a couple of minutes of joy, that's what we need. Let's go to Anna in Manhattan. Anna, welcome to the show.
Hey there, thank you. Long-time listener. So way back, probably 15, 20 years ago, I was walking home, and I was behind a woman, a young gal, who was clunking a Christmas tree, dragging it pretty much. She'd walk a few steps, stop, clunk, 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 stop, clunk, clunk, clunk. I said, hey, do you want some help? She said, sure. I said, I'll help you as far as I'm going. And we started walking together. I held one end, she held the other, and she said, I will over here. It turned out she lived in my building 2 floors above me.
Oh, wow.
And we've been thick as thieves friends for 15, 20 years now.
Oh, wow. So do you remember this moment? Did you guys sit and talk about, remember when I was dragging that Christmas tree around? And that's how
I think we've talked about it over the years of how we met, but it was just, we never saw each other in the elevators. We didn't know we lived in the same building. You just have different schedules, so you don't see people who live in your building.
Yeah.
It was bizarre because I thought, well, I have somewhere to go. I'll just take her as far as I can go. And she was going where I was going.
Well, thank you for that, Anna.
I love that so much. I feel like the basic condition of New York City is we're just 11 million people all schlepping things around the city. We're carrying things, and each time is an opportunity for connection, to build a friendship, even if it's for a fleeting moment or for a lifetime. I really appreciate your story. Thank you so much.
Let's go to Ron in Edgemont. Ron, welcome to the show.
Hi. It was so nice to hear that war radio play.
Theater of War.
Theater of War.
Yeah.
It reminded me of an experience I had once in Manhattan with my sister-in-law. We were walking, I think it was 3rd Avenue and 86th Street, and there used to be a restaurant there, takeout, called Papaya King.
Yeah.
And there was a sign in the window, and I read it to my sister-in-law and I said, look, Papaya King, home of the world's best hot dog. And all of a sudden, somebody speaks out behind me and says, world's best hot dog. Everybody knows the world's best hot dog is from Nathan's. So sort of told the story, but it was like everybody. And I turned around, and it was a homeless man who was sort of camped out on the corner in a phone booth. So maybe he had never read the sign before, but when he heard me read it, he was incredulous. He couldn't believe somebody was saying that Papaya King is the world's best hot dog.
It's a hotly debated subject. Did you get the hot dog?
Your attitude.
Did you get the hot dog,
Pardon
Ron?
me?
Did you get the hot dog from Papaya King?
I got the Papaya King. Yeah,
And
yeah.
Yes or no? Is it the world's best hot dog?
It was incredible. It was incredible. It was at least the Manhattan's best hot dog.
Good enough. Good enough. Let's go to Theodore in Queens. Theodore, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for taking my call. I love the story so much, and I also love Jesse Eisenberg in Zombieland.
All right.
My story was, I'm in 7th grade right now. Back when I was in preschool, whenever I went to recess, there was this female unemployed stand-up comedian who just got out the window, and she would scream curse words at us, and she would be quiet.
Wait, don't scream the curse words, Theodore.
No, I'm not saying. No, she was. They talked about it in the Gothamist, and I remember one of the times she said that she was going to call Santa and tell him not to give us any presents.
Oh no!
Oh my God. And now looking back in hindsight, I know Santa ain't real.
Theodore, are you yourself an aspiring stand-up comic?
Yes, I hope to be one when I grow up.
Oh, all right. Well, you're getting some nods of approval from professional performers here in the room.
You do good voices.
Are you really in 7th grade?
Yes, I am.
Excellent.
And you soak up the Gothamist and WNYC. How many papers do you read in the morning?
Nah, that's my parents.
What's that?
That's his parents.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Precocious.
Interesting.
Thank you so much, Theodore. I cannot wait to buy a ticket to see you on stage. Let's go to Deborah in Sussex County, New Jersey. Deborah, welcome to the show.
Hi, I'm really enjoying your presentation. I had lived in Manhattan when I was much younger, and I was also a struggling writer, and I had a regular day job, but I also had won a place in a scholarship program sponsored by the Academy of American Poets. And I felt like I wasn't, would I fit in because I submitted a children's story, and that's how I got in. But one night it was going to be my turn finally to read one of my original pieces, and I was very excited. Unfortunately, and I was standing, I think, in front of the Waldorf Astoria for some reason. It started to rain. It was getting late. I didn't think I wasn't sure I could even afford a cab if I could have even found one in the rain. And I was so stressed out by the thought of not making it to the class that night, I started to cry. And I was standing there weeping, and I suddenly heard a voice, a lovely, friendly voice with a southern accent. And he said, "What's the matter, miss?" And I said, "I can't get uptown." And he said, "Well, I'll take you." And I looked around, and there was this wonderful African-American older gentleman wearing a chauffeur's uniform standing beside a huge limousine. And he said, "I'll take you." And I said, "In that?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "I don't have any money." He said, "You don't need any money." And next thing I know, I'm riding uptown in a limousine to my class. And I never forgot his kindness or the serendipity of the moment. And I'm happy to say that I did become a published author. And the first book I wrote is still in print, and it's been out for 37 years this year. So New York is full of amazing serendipitous moments. And I want to say one last thing. Okay. Another thing that happened, I went into New York after I had children and moved to New Jersey, but I wanted a weekend to myself, and I was in New York on Labor Day weekend. It was almost empty, and I decided I was going to treat myself to an off-Broadway showing of the Vagina Monologues. So I bought my ticket at Tickets on Broadway, and it started to rain, and I suddenly see people in front of a deli across the street with a marquee picking up their feet as if they were afraid of stepping on something. When I looked down, I saw what it was. It was a baby pigeon, and I had never seen a baby pigeon before. And in fact, on the helix, as you enter Manhattan, when the Ask Jeeves search engine was being, was around. It had a trivia question, and that very morning as I came into the city, it said, "Why don't you ever see baby pigeons?" And I said, I don't think I ever had seen a baby pigeon. But there now one was. It had fallen out of the marquee, and I love animals, and I couldn't, and I don't, know a lot of people think, oh, they're just flying rats. But I couldn't bear to think this little guy was going to be hurt. So I stopped to pick him up, and as I stopped, the whole crowd on the street just stopped. It was like a Norman Rockwell painting, and everybody starts, get her a box, do this, do that. Everybody came out to help me. So I put the pigeon in a box with a little paper, and I went to the show and had the nerve to ask the woman at the coat check, can I check my pigeon? Because there was no intermission.
Did she let you?
She did. And I took the pigeon. Okay. I took the pigeon back to New Jersey, and went to a wildlife refuge. And the woman looked in the box and she said, "It's a pigeon." I said, "Yeah, but," and she said, well, she taught me how to feed it. I had that pigeon for over 15 years.
Wow! Oh my God!
Oh my God.
And he was a real New Yorker. He was a New York pigeon.
New York pigeon.
Thank you so much, Deborah. Listening to you talk, I'm thinking we are a city of like David Sedaris is such a talented writer, but we're a city of writers. We're a city of storytellers. We have such eccentric experiences to share, and in the world, in the state the world is in right now, in the things we have to face in the news, we wanted to just take a moment and really lean into serendipity, the luck, the connection, the joy of the stories that you shared and other people have been sharing tonight. It's been really inspiring.
Indeed. Thank you for that. Let's go to Naomi in Boston. Naomi, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm a part of the New York diaspora, and I was back there once, and I was on the subway, and my sense of how you get along in New York is you do something I call sotto voce fetching, and that's you turn to some random stranger and you find something to complain about, and there's always going to be something. And then there's this instantaneous bond because you're fetching about the same thing. And so I'm on the subway, and it's very, very hot, and the air conditioning isn't working, so of course there was something to fetch about. And so I'm talking to this guy next to me, and he's from the Dominican Republic, and he's headed way uptown on I think they call it 123 or something. Not for me, it's the Broadway 7th IRT. Anyway, he's heading way uptown. I'm going uptown, but not quite as far as he is. And I had an unopened bottle of water in my bag because I'd gone into a bodega earlier because I needed to change a 20, and I hadn't drunk any of the water, and he needed it more than I did because he was going to be going a lot farther. So I gave him the water, and then it came to my stop, and I was about to get off, and he leaned over, and he kissed me on the cheek. And I said, this is like magic. I mean, here I am, this complete total stranger is kissing me on the subway. This is not harassment. This is serendipity. I love this thing.
It's an important clarification.
Yeah. Consent. Yeah, exactly.
Indeed. Let's go to Gregory in Harlem. Gregory, welcome to the show.
Hey, guys. Hi.
Hey,
listen, I was a young 19-year-old looking for a job, and I went to a company called Young and Rubicam on 285 Madison Avenue. I went up, I filled out all the paperwork, and they said, we'll get back to you. And I got back on the elevator, and a guy whose name is Tony Isidore, a very famous writer and producer in the advertising industry, said, what are you doing? And I said, yeah, I'm kind of a writer, and I wanted to get a job. And he said, oh, come with me. And we went all the way back down and then all the way back up to the 21st floor. And he said, hire this guy. And I became a junior copywriter. A couple of years later, I spent the next almost 40 years as a writer, producer, advertising maven in the industry. I was the guy who wrote for PSA the line under my boss at the time, whose name was Forrest Long, for the United Negro College Fund. I'm black, by the way. for the United Negro College Fund. The mind is a terrible thing to waste.
Wait, you wrote that line, Gregory?
Yes, I am sure you have used in your life. And
yes, sir.
Indeed.
So it was just an amazing. I didn't even know what I was going to get into, and I have been. It's just an amazing. I'm approaching my 80th year on this planet, and that story for him on that elevator, that guy said, "No, come with me." And it has just been an amazing thing for my whole life.
Bravo.
Yes, that's a mic drop moment right there.
Yes, it is.
Oh, my God.
Speaking of serendipity, Gregory, A, thank you so much for calling. And I have to say, one of the things I love about this job, I loved hosting call-in radio because the listeners of this station are so many people like you, Gregory, the people who call in that have done such remarkable things randomly just because we had the lines open. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, so we're going to take things in a slightly different direction and have the actors revisit a moment in the story, the bottom of page 4, and it's the narrator and the Puerto Rican woman, the sort of neighbor, are dragging this piece of furniture up the street, reflecting on how the city has changed, and they have this exchange.
She told me that she was born in San Juan but moved to New York as a child.
The city is nothing like it used to be,
she said, frowning at a high-rise apartment building that had recently gone up.
My neighbors now, they'll see someone bleeding on the street and walk right by. That would never happen back where I'm from. In Puerto Rico, if someone's hungry, you feed them. End of story.
So as people heard that incredibly, astute line that speaks to this moment, I mean, there are a lot of people, if not bleeding on the street right now, there are a lot of people on the street. And there are a lot of opportunities to walk by people, and there are opportunities to help people. And so I'm wondering if we can hear from callers, what do you think of that line that she said? Where I'm from, if someone's hungry. In Puerto Rico, if someone's hungry, you feed them. End of story. That line resonate with you? Does it speak to your experiences in New York now, or maybe the kindness we've been hearing tonight, the stories we've been hearing counter that statement? But what about that line? You feed them, end of story. What did it say to you tonight?
So think about that. If that's you, call us up, 212-433-WNYC. That's 212-433-9692. And we will continue to hear all of your stories about being a New Yorker. You're listening to Theater of War on the radio, a special from WNYC. Again, we're taking your calls about navigating life in this great city, and we'll hear more of your stories after a break. This is Kai Wright, and you are listening to Theater of War on the radio, a special from WNYC. We are talking about a story that David Sedaris wrote and published in The New Yorker recently. It's about living in the city and about the chance encounters we all have here all the time that shape our lives, shape ourselves, shape our understanding of where we live. And we want to hear from you. What kind of interactions have you had? What stories have made you think differently about what it means to be a New Yorker? And this particular line we heard in the story about what it means to just help somebody. There was a line in there where the woman said, "Where I'm from, if someone's hungry, you feed them." How does that line resonate with you? That's what we want to hear. 212-433-WNYC. That's 212-433-9692 with your reactions to that and your New York stories. And let's get right back to the phones. Nicole in Kew Gardens, Queens. Nicole, welcome to the show.
Hey, so I'm a little bit apart from what you guys are talking about now, but
That's okay.
I wanted to talk about something. I wanted to talk about something that made me feel. I mean, although people helped me, but something that made me feel like a really New Yorker. I mean, you would think it was like marrying an NYU professor, Julian Cornell, who teaches film, my love of my life, or it was like giving birth to 4 kids in 5 years in New York City, or it was like becoming an American Idol finalist. Like, you would think all of these things would make me feel like a real New Yorker. But what really made me feel like a real New Yorker was when I gave birth to my 3rd son, and the babysitter for our 1st and 2nd son didn't show up. And so I had to take the train while in labor with my third son. His name is Truman. He's now 14. Trudy, say hi. Hi.
Hey, Truman.
It's true. He's 14 and a freshman now. Yeah. And so he's a little recalcitrant to say hello. But and I had to take the train with him, super gravid state, and it was a lot of work, but I made it to NYU Hospital and was able to give birth to this healthy baby boy. And what's really cool is that this boy is obsessed with trains, and he wants to work for the MTA someday. He wants to be a civil engineer and revamp the entire MTA system, not just drive trains, but completely revamp the MTA subway system. And in fact, he's right now applying for the National Railway Historical Society summer camp.
Who knew there's such a thing?
Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah, there is. So woohoo, we're hoping for a scholarship because, we're in one income family. So this is something that's been I think deep rooted since primordially speaking when he was in my womb. So we love NPR. We are members and sustaining members, and we're just excited to see that this boy who was born basically almost on a train is so excited to still be part of the MTA and loves his city so much. So that was the minute I really felt like a true New Yorker.
Thank you for your support and your story. And, I got to say, if Truman does, in fact, become a civil engineer and fix the MTA for all of us, he's going to be the most popular man in New York City.
Go.
Yeah.
Go, Truman.
He has my vote.
Let's go to Tito in the Lower East Side. Tito, welcome to the show.
Thank you. So I grew up on the Lower East Side in a building with 30 apartment units. And out of the 30 apartment units, 13 of those units were different nationalities. 13 nationalities in one building of 30 units. The Lower East Side was very mixed and very poor and very working class. My mom used to always put some extra potatoes, some extra rice and beans in the pot for the neighborhood kids, because even though we were poor, there were kids poorer than us.
That's right.
So according to Rosie, this will never happen in Puerto Rico. Well, this would never have happened in a poor working class community like the Lower East Side. And I think that New York has changed quite a bit. I think that New York has lost its heart, its compassion. And I just wish it wasn't that way. I've been an investigator for the fair housing of city New York. And because of my experience as a young man, I really have a lot of passion for this work. And hoping to get some justice for people in this world, because things are getting really bad. And I hate to get off on a negative, but the truth of the matter is, it's just not the New York I grew up in. And like, for instance, we used to have a stoop culture where everybody was sitting in the stoops. And even though we didn't know each other's languages, we all understood that we were all poor, and that kind of stuff, it's not happening anymore. There used to be bodegas in Manhattan. There might be one left. They're all gone. So it's a shame that poor working class community have been pushed aside right now. And I don't want to make a big speech. Right now, they're going after public housing, trying to privatize public housing so that the developers can take it over. And it's just disgusting. Thank you for your time, and you have a wonderful show.
Thank you so much, Tito. Rosie Perez, you wanted to respond to something.
I want to say something, Tito. That's how I grew up. We were very, very poor, and we were on public assistance. But my aunt always made a big fat pot of rice, and whoever needed food, we gave. And so I really appreciate your story, and I hope the listeners, get inspired by that. But there are some good people still left in the city that do that, and so I still have hope. But thank you for your story.
Tito, this is Bryan. I just want to say it's so inspiring to hear you talk about the Lower East Side. I also live on the Lower East Side, and I'm nostalgic for a past that I didn't experience. But hearing you bring it into the room, I don't know, it fills me with a sense of wanting to find that kindness. And while what you said is it's hard to reckon with, this idea that New York has changed and it's not the same, we don't have the compassion. I think by sharing your story, you're inspiring people to want to follow in your footsteps and find that compassion again. So I really appreciate you for bringing that onto the air and for sharing that tonight.
Let's go to Angela in Queens, who I think wants to talk about something similar. Angela, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much. What hopefully what I have to say will enlighten people, and on a positive note, like Ms. Perez said, in Puerto Rico that would be the case that if somebody was hungry, you would definitely feed them. It just is a no-brainer. So my island is St. Croix, and so we're cruising. And so I don't know if it's a Caribbean thing or just a humanitarian thing. So I have a nonprofit. We deliver groceries free of charge, first Friday of every month, and I am one of those people that if let's say there's somebody in the street that I see that's homeless that looks like they're in need. They may not even be homeless, but they may just be in need. So I will be one of those people that'll stop traffic. So, you can honk at me, whatever you want to do. I'm not moving because I'm going to take, whatever grocery bags that we didn't give out from, our nonprofit delivery project. I'm going to take out the bag, or from Hit or Sell Bakery that gives us free baked goods that's in the neighborhood. You take out that and feed that person, and for sure, respect that if they don't want it, I'm not going to push it on them because I think that they need it. But for sure, I would definitely feed that person just because I can and because we should. Humanitarians are perhaps in short supply, but I think that we need to stand up and let other people who may need a little bit of incentive to do the right thing see us. And if I can just say that I did not have any intentions of having a nonprofit, a food delivery project. I mean, I have 99 jobs and a speech therapist in the DOE, and EI and all that. I don't really have a lot of time, but somehow, in the neighborhood there was a fire, and I just had a need. I don't know, a message that said to me, how can you help these students who are going to be displaced? Because when you enter someone else's family, you're now a new burden for them, to another mouth to feed, and then people are not necessarily so welcoming. It's like they might have to take you in because of obligation. So I decided, okay, let's at least feed the family so that they don't feel so much. They don't feel away. They would be more inviting to the people that they're taking in, even if they're not families, but they'll feel better. And so we went from feeding 7 families, from this fire, to now like close to 500, thanks to the defunding of the EBT card.
Wow.
And it's just, and we do it first Friday of every month, and it's anonymous. So like you register for whatever respective public school that's in partnership with us, or shelters, coordinators, they register, and we deliver the groceries, and you don't ever see us. We're actually called Give and Go. You put it on your doorstep, take a picture, and gone. You don't need to feel away. You don't feel food shame. You don't feel anything. We rescue food and whatever. And I think more people, if they just listen to their inner voice that speaks to them,
yeah,
and to remember that maybe today it's you, but tomorrow it could be me. So I need to do the right thing. Just be a good humanitarian.
Thank you so much, Angela. Thank you for sharing that. From Cash and Carry, our story, to Give and Go, your nonprofit, the question of where the kindness is in New York, you're answering that with your work. Thanks for sharing that. Also, it's a perfect segue to a moment we're going to return to in the story that was read tonight at the very end of the story. And it's a moment where the narrator is walking down the street and he has an interaction with a person who's unhoused. And it causes him to reflect on himself, on the choices he's making, on the city itself. And we're going to drop right into that right now with David Patrick Kelly and Jesse Eisenberg reading this last section of the story.
The man saw all this playing out on my face and barked, quite unfairly in my opinion.
I hope you burn in hell!
Which, of course, is another reason to live in New York. Every day delivers a kick, and always in a different spot. There are times when being condemned to hell really gets under my skin. Am I a terrible person? I'll ask myself. Am I crueler than most? Am I thoughtless? If I'm cursed by a mentally ill person, I'll really dig in and claw at myself. I've always seen them as prophets and hold my breath as I pass, afraid of the truth they might reveal. Early in my time in New York, not long after the Little Golden Book episode, a woman dressed in rags in the Staten Island ferry terminal looked me in the eye and told me I was going to die before I reached 50. Thousands of people moving about like ants, yet I was the one she singled out. Her voice was clear and authoritative, like an oracle's. Our brief encounter really lit a fire under me. I've only got 16 years to make a splash, I thought, knowing that time would pass a lot faster than I'd wanted to. When I didn't die at age 50, when I woke up in Paris as alive as I'd been on the day before, I was shocked, but also greatly relieved, for my life was good by then, and I didn't want it taken away from me. This time, though, I walked on by. Burn in hell indeed, I thought. First off, the guy on the sidewalk outside the liquor store was a drunk, not an oracle. Second, I had just helped a stranger carry a cabinet down York Avenue for what felt to me like, and probably to her too, like an eternity. And a person gets points for things like that.
Thank you so much. That section at the end of the story, I don't know, it zeroes in on a question I wanted to ask the audience tonight, and that's, it's kind of absurd. It's hilarious. The narrator is having this interaction with someone who's unhoused, and he decides not to help him, and the person who's experiencing homelessness shouts that he should go burn in hell, and something about that makes him grateful that he lives in New York. Almost like he's thankful to be told to go burn in hell, and he says every day delivers a kick, and always in a different spot. And I wondered what that said to listeners tonight as they were listening, what that exchange said to them about New York. I mean, not everyone has a nonprofit. Not everyone, is delivering food on doors. There are all kinds of ways people help each other. But what about this moment of connection?
And that may be something we want you guys to sit with. That may be something for you to ponder after we get off the air here. We've got a few minutes left. We dropped a big one for you there at the end, but I want to get a last couple of calls in. Maybe you're going to respond to what Bryan just said. Maybe that's something for you to take with you after you listen. But let's go to Steve in West Orange.
Good evening. Thank you for taking this call.
Yeah, and so Steve, you've got a story about a piano, right?
Got a story. David Creech, Terry Creech was a choreographer who lived on West Broadway when we moved in 1981, about 8 or 9 blocks north of us. And he had a piano for sale. It was a stand-up piano, and I'm trying to remember what you call that. But in any event, he said it was available. So we went to his loft, looked for it, and found out that we could roll it, but we had to step it up a foot to the next door building in order to get to an elevator where we could bring it down. Brought it down on the elevator, put it on a couple of dollies, rolled it out into the street, and my partner at that time put our Volkswagen van behind us with the blinking lights on to keep traffic from running us over. This was a Sunday morning, so things were pretty quiet in Tribeca. And we started rolling it down the street and down West Broadway. And people offered to help us. And so by the time we got 3 or 4 blocks, we had 5 or 6 people all pushing this piano down West Broadway. And a guy comes by on a car, and he says, "Get a flute." He didn't.
Get a flute. Oh, that's so funny.
Well done, Steve. Well done. All right, so we have 2 piano stories. That was Steve. Thank you, Steve. Yeah. Let's hear from Rosemary in Stuyvesant Town. Rosemary, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for taking my call. Years ago, after I retired, I bought a red wooden upright piano in a thrift shop nearby. And when I got it home, my daughter said, "That is ugly. I wanted people to come and play music in my apartment and we'd sing and be happy." So I realized it was an eyesore. I had to get rid of it. Outside were some men that were moving truck. And I said to them, "Would you move something for me and I'll give you a big tip?" They said yes. And they took my piano and they brought it back to the thrift store. First, the thrift store said, "We don't take pianos." I said, "I just bought it from you." So they took it back, and I lost a lot of money, but I have a better looking living room now.
There we go.
Moral of the story.
That has to be the end tonight. We wanted to leave you on a light note. Bryan, 20 seconds for the last thought.
I'm just so bowled over by the responses we got from listeners tonight. I knew that we were a city full of writers and storytellers, but it's so great to hear about all these incredible connections that people made while schlepping things down the street and helping strangers. I'm grateful to be a New Yorker tonight, listening to all of you share your very personal stories with us on the air.
Bryan Doerries is Artistic Director of Theater of War. Nice to sit with you again, Bryan. Thanks to the Donald A. Pels Charitable Trust for supporting this program. Thanks to our incredible actors, Rosie Perez, Jesse Eisenberg, and David Patrick Kelly. And thanks for all of you to listening to Theater of War live on the radio. You can read David Sedaris' story, Cash and Carry, along with plenty more of his writing at NewYorker.com. I'm Kai Wright from The Guardian, and thank you so much for spending this time with us.